In the 1960s, a group of local conservationists in Minnesota had a dream of a new age zoo. A zoo that would revolutionize animal exhibitry by displaying animals in natural, outdoor habitats. A decade later, in May 1978, that vision opened as the Minnesota Zoological Gardens, and along with it opened the Northern Trail. If I didn't know, I would never guess that most of this was almost 50 years old. 16 mostly massive habitats that still put many brand new exhibits to shame. So, let me walk you through one of my favorite exhibits. Beginning near the splash pad, you're immediately taken in by the theming of the award-winning Russia's Grizzly Coast, the Northern Trail's only major sub-attraction, which was completed in 2008, replicating the environment of Russia's Far East, an underrepresented ecosystem in American zoos. The coast's first habitat lives up to its name with a depiction of a rocky coastline, a perfect setting for northern sea otters. If my research holds up, Minnesota is home to 5 of these large aquatic mustelids. All 5 are rescues from Alaska, with the more long-term residents being Capers, Jasper, and Rocky, all of whom have been at the zoo since at least 2007. More recently, the trio was joined by 2 new rescues, Nuka and Denali, who came to the zoo in 2023. Though these individuals aren't from Russia, sea otters do range from Alaska across the northern Pacific to the Russian coast. To thrive in these cold waters, sea otters have the thickest fur of any mammal, with up to 1 million hairs per square inch. To replicate that environment here at the zoo, their saltwater pool, which continues with underwater viewing around the corner, is always kept at a cool 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. From the Pacific coast, you emerge in the volcanic north, where the pathway is lined by ominous bubbling mud pots. Continuing up the path, you're guided back into the caves, where a small pool for carp appears to be connected to what's behind it, which is the Bear Meadow. Modeled after the rugged environment of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, this is a haven for rescued brown bears. Sadie, Haynes, and Kenai share similar stories to the sea otters. All 3 were found orphaned as cubs in Alaska sometime during the year of 2006 and were brought together due to their similar ages at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. In 2008, the trio made the move to Minnesota for the Grizzly Coast opening. Though Kenai sadly passed away in 2024, Sadie and Haynes remained to act as stand-ins for their Russian counterparts. Russia is home to 4 subspecies of brown bear, however Russia's Grizzly Coast specifically represents the Kamchatka or Far Eastern brown bear. Native to the Kamchatka Peninsula and the surrounding coast and islands, they are the largest brown bears in Eurasia and are believed to be ancestors of the Alaskan Kodiak bear. Like Kodiaks, they are able to grow larger than other subspecies thanks to a salmon-heavy diet. In fact, due to the abundance of food, the Kamchatka Peninsula is home to the highest density of brown bears in the world. Outside of the caves, the Bear Meadow can be viewed again from an additional viewing area that includes a demonstration wall. 2 standout features of the habitat are the iconic centerpiece nicknamed Bear Rock, and a recreation of a geyser, which again pays homage to the volcanic nature of Russia's north. Past the mammoth dig site, we are entering the Grizzly Coast's last environment, the forested south. Starting with a dried up riverbed that opened with wild boar, but they are apparently hard to obtain, so after the last individual passed away, the zoo, for now, settled for the next best thing and brought in 2 Mangalitsa pigs, a breed that was originally developed in Hungary by crossing domestic pigs with wild boar. Their habitat can be viewed again from inside an authentic Russian log cabin, which is filled with detailed signage and also connects to our next habitat, the first of 3 for the critically endangered Amur leopard. Looping up the hill, you can view the first habitat again from the top and see all 3 exhibits from one viewing space, in a setup that allows leopards in different habitats to see each other. Though estimates vary, there is only around 100 Amur leopards left in the wild. However, there is still hope for these magnificent big cats, since there is currently over 200 Amur leopards living in zoos worldwide, with plans to potentially release the offspring of captive leopards into the wild in the works. That technically ends Russia's Grizzly Coast, but the next habitat continues the Russian Far East theme at the Tiger Base Camp. I'm not sure if the habitat itself was changed at all, but the zoo's tiger complex received upgrades to the visitor experience in 2002. The base camp is designed to offer a treetop level view similar to how you may see tigers in the wild, with a boardwalk that takes you right into the middle of the single best tiger enclosure I've ever seen. The Amur tiger is the world's largest feline, with males growing up to 10 feet long and weighing over 600 pounds. Unlike other tigers, the Amur is specially adapted to thrive in snow, with large paws that act as snowshoes and 2 layers of fur. Their dense undercoat provides insulation and traps heat, keeping the cat warm even in harsh winters. Despite their size, Amur tigers are stealthy, silent hunters, and once a target is locked in, their powerful, muscular bodies help them bring down large prey like deer and wild boar, and they have even been known to kill adult brown bears. With that, we're finally leaving Russia and moving southwest down to the Tibetan Plateau, represented by a long sloping hillside, bookended by 2 viewing structures, and home to the Sichuan Takin, one of many species that has been displayed on the Northern Trail since the zoo's opening. Though they are not the rarest of zoo animals, as of 2018, only around 100 takin were displayed across 18 zoos. Numbers that the Minnesota Zoo has helped boost, with 17 takin kids born since 1978. Takins live at altitudes of over 14,000 feet and have many interesting adaptations to live in these mountainous regions. I've talked before about their large moose-like snouts and oily skin, but another of the takin's special features is their split hooves that help them navigate rocky terrain. Takin social structures vary greatly by the season. In the spring and early summer, cows and their young congregate in herds of up to 300 individuals, but when food is more scarce, these herds break into smaller groups of 35 or less. Mature bulls are generally solitary outside of the breeding season. Across from the takin, you get the first glimpse of our next biome, the North American prairie, and there is perhaps no more famous resident of these prairies than the American bison. Bison have been a fixture of the Minnesota Zoo since opening day. American bison are generally considered to have one of the best conservation success stories. They were nearly hunted to extinction in the early 1800s, to the point where fewer than 1,000 individuals remained in the United States. However, thanks to government protections and captive breeding, they began to recover. Bison were one of the first species to have individuals born in zoos reintroduced into the wild. Today there are hundreds of thousands of American bison, but when you consider that there used to be as many as 60 million bison roaming the Great Plains, and that only around 20,000 of the bison around today live outside of human care, and most of those are in national parks, it's clear there is still work to be done. The Minnesota Zoo regularly releases bison born at the zoo into state parks in Minnesota, with emphasis on increasing populations that are devoid of cattle genes, which were introduced into many managed populations during repopulation efforts. Restoring bison numbers is important since they act as a keystone species on the prairies. They shape the landscape as they move, dispersing seeds that get stuck to their shaggy coats, and create mud wallows, which in turn fill with rainwater, providing habitat for amphibians. Where bison roam, many smaller species benefit, including prairie dogs, who live in front of the bison here at the zoo, though I've yet to see them, since their habitat was being renovated on my 2023 visit, and they were obviously busy hibernating on my most recent visit. Another prairie native that benefits from bison can be found across the path, the pronghorn. In the winter, bison plow paths through deep snow and uncover vegetation that pronghorns can feed on. The pronghorn is an incredibly unique species. Though they closely resemble antelope, they do belong to their own genus and are actually most closely related to giraffes and okapi. The male's horns don't follow the typical rules either. Though they are branched and shed a sheath like deer antlers, they remain year-round like cattle horns. While they are second to the cheetah among the fastest land mammals, the pronghorn can hold a high speed for longer, able to maintain a speed of 40 miles per hour for at least 7 miles. Opposite the pronghorn is one of the locations from which guests can access the Treetop Trail, a 1¼ mile long repurposing of the zoo's old monorail path that elevates visitors 32 feet in the air, offering a one-of-a-kind bird's-eye view of not only the northern trail habitats, but also the surrounding wilderness. It opened in July 2023 and is claimed to be the longest elevated pedestrian loop in the world. Whether you're on the Treetop Trail or the ground level, your next stop will be 2 more massive yards that rotate 2 endangered Asian ungulates, starting with the critically endangered Bactrian camel. Bactrian camels are one of the few animals to brave the harsh conditions of the Gobi Desert, where they face extreme temperature ranges. Pads on their knees protect them when kneeling on the rocky ground, and they have long eyelashes and are able to close their nostrils to protect from blowing sand. Special blood cells that store fluids keep them healthy even when dehydrated, and when they do find a source of water, they can drink 15 gallons in a single sitting. Bactrian camels will even feed on fish and other carrion if no other food is available. Some of you may have been surprised a moment ago when I said Bactrian camels are critically endangered, and there is a bit of an asterisk on that. While wild Bactrian camels number less than 1,000 individuals, the camels you see here at the zoo are domestic Bactrian camels, of which you can find around 2 million worldwide. However, no such asterisk exists for the Przewalski's horse, also called the Asian wild horse, Mongolian wild horse, or Taki. Regardless of what you call them, they are the last truly wild horse, but we almost lost them forever. The last Przewalski's horse was seen in the Gobi Desert in the late 1960s, and the species was declared extinct in the wild. Thankfully, there were already captive populations in the United States, England, and Germany, and the horses bred well in human care. Reintroduction efforts began in the 1990s. In 1991, the Minnesota Zoo sent a genetically valuable Przewalski's horse stallion to the Netherlands, whose descendants are now living wild. Today, there is around 2,000 Przewalski's horses living wild in China and Mongolia, all of whom are descendants from just 14 individuals. If you venture out to the old muskox habitat, at least as of my 2023 visit, you'll find more Przewalski's horses. As you continue to loop around, we're taking a break from the large open yards with a modest, for this trail, sized wooded habitat that has gone through a number of residents in recent years. It held Mexican gray wolves, I believe, until around 2011. On my 2023 visit, I saw one of the zoo's coyotes, but if you entered into the indoor viewing at that same time, it was still a shrine dedicated to the dhole or Asian wild dog, one of the rarest American zoo animals that I believe can now be found only in the Bronx and at the wilds in Ohio. Instead of trying to acquire more dholes, the zoo recently rebranded and reopened this habitat as the Red Panda Forest, a mixed species habitat that features not only red pandas, but also the fang-tufted deer and rare red-crowned cranes. We're now reaching the final stretch of habitat, starting with a large woodland yard with a pond in the middle for the Alaskan moose, a species I've had a lot of luck with at the other 3 zoos in the lower 48 that currently display them, just not here in Minnesota. So moving on to what's across from them, a more open habitat for reindeer. Reindeer and caribou are essentially the same species, but for wild populations they are called reindeer in Eurasia, while in North America they go by caribou, and reindeer refers to domesticated animals, which is probably what you're looking at here. Although I believe this exhibit did used to display actual woodland caribou, a subspecies that once roamed in Minnesota. Whatever variety you're talking about, reindeer or caribou, they are the only cervids where both males and females grow antlers. Males shed their antlers after the mating season in the fall, while females keep theirs through the winter and shed them after the calving season in the spring. Reindeer herds undergo some of the longest migrations among land mammals in search of food. sometimes traveling over 2,500 miles in a year. To aid them in their journeys, reindeer are strong swimmers and can easily cross wide lakes and rivers. Which leaves us with the Northern Trail's final habitat, the tiger lair, the second of the zoo's fantastic tiger exhibits. Viewable first across a moat, and then through large glass windows that again were added in 2002, offering your chance to be inches away from these majestic big cats. With such amazing habitats, it's no wonder that more than 40 tiger cubs have been born at the Minnesota Zoo, with the first litter coming just a year after the zoo opened in 1979, and the most recent in 2024. A set of twins born to mother Sundari. Although I didn't see them, I did see their father Luca in the base camp habitat, while the tiger I found sprinting around in the snow in the tiger lair is Yana, one of Sundari's previous cubs who was born here in Minnesota back in 2022. Though they are the most common tiger to come across in an AZA zoo, Amur tigers are still very rare in the wild. In fact, in the 1930s and 40s they nearly went extinct, as the population dropped below 50 individuals. Thanks to conservation efforts and protections put in place by their native Russia, their numbers have rebounded, but there is still fewer than 1,000 Amur tigers in the wild, and they continue to be at risk from habitat loss, poaching, and decreasing prey sources. And with them ends our trek through the Northern Trail at the Minnesota Zoo, a mostly 50-year-old complex that was decades ahead of its time when it opened, and I would argue is still firmly among the top zoo exhibits in the entire country. Thank you for watching.